Rayan Malik and Aisha Khan looked like the perfect couple, young, beautiful, and wildly in love. But just days after their dream wedding in Dubai, their honeymoon in the Maldives ended in horror when Rayan pushed his bride into shark-infested waters, turning a fairy tale romance into one of the most chilling crimes of our time. The wedding of Rayan Malik and Aisha Khan was nothing short of a royal celebration in the heart of Dubai. Rayan, a 32-year-old real estate tycoon, was known for his charm, money, and connections. He had everything a man could ask for, except what he called the perfect wife. When he met Aisha, a 26-year-old fashion designer with elegance, intelligence, and modesty, he believed he had finally found the missing piece of his perfect life. Their love story quickly became the talk of the city. The engagement was luxurious, covered by lifestyle magazines, and their wedding day was even grander. It took place in a marble-decorated ballroom filled with roses, diamonds, and soft golden lights. Guests from across the world attended, including business partners, politicians, and influencers. Cameras flashed as the bride walked down the aisle in a shimmering white gown, her smile glowing with innocence and excitement. Rayan looked proud, his hand gripping hers tightly, as if claiming ownership. Behind all the glamour, however, subtle cracks had already begun to form. A few of Rayan's friends noticed his temper when things didn't go according to plan. He was polite in public but demanding in private, needing control over every detail. Aisha, blinded by love, thought his behavior came from care and protection. As the night ended with fireworks and champagne, everyone admired their chemistry, calling them the dream couple. No one could have imagined that beneath Rayan's composed smile lay something far more dangerous than anyone could see, an obsession that would soon turn their perfect beginning into a chilling nightmare. The fairy tale wedding that started with blessings was unknowingly paving the way toward a dark, irreversible tragedy. After the extravagant wedding, Rayan decided that their honeymoon had to be just as unforgettable. He told Aisha that he had planned everything himself, wanting to surprise her with the destination. When she found out they were flying to the Maldives, she was overjoyed. The turquoise water, the coral reefs, and the luxury villas over the sea seemed like a dream come true. Rayan smiled, acting like the perfect husband who wanted to give his bride the world. On social media, Aisha shared pictures from the airport and called herself the luckiest wife alive. To everyone watching, they looked like a picture of happiness. But Rayan's silence and long, thoughtful stares hinted at something darker that only he knew. When they arrived at the resort, the staff greeted them with flowers and champagne. Their private villa floated above crystal-clear waters, with glass floors showing colorful fish below. Aisha was enchanted. Rayan appeared calm, polite, and caring, but there was something distant in his tone. He spent hours on his phone, claiming to be handling work emergencies, while Aisha explored the beach alone. At dinner, he smiled without warmth and spoke very little. Aisha assumed he was tired and tried to keep the mood light. She had no idea that every detail of this trip was planned with precision, not to make her happy, but to ensure she never returned home. Rayan had chosen this location for more than romance. The deep waters, secluded villas, and shark-feeding zones around the resort made it the perfect place to hide a crime. While Aisha saw beauty and love, Rayan saw an opportunity. The paradise she admired was silently waiting to become her final resting place. Rayan's carefully crafted calmness began to fade the moment he confirmed his suspicions. A few weeks before the wedding, he had noticed an unfamiliar name flashing on Aisha's phone. At first, he ignored it, convincing himself that every relationship has a past. But curiosity and ego slowly consumed him. When Aisha left her phone unattended one night, he unlocked it and found a string of old messages from a man named Samir, once her fiancé. The messages were harmless and dated long before she met Rayan, yet his pride twisted them into betrayal. In his mind, Aisha's heart had never truly belonged to him. From that moment, love turned into resentment. He smiled through the wedding, kissed her for the cameras, and promised eternal love, but inside, he was planning revenge. Rayan's obsession with control couldn't accept that someone else had ever held a place in her life. He began digging into Aisha's past, her friends, her family, even her old photos. The more he found, the angrier he became. He started imagining conversations that never happened, believing she had deceived him. Instead of confronting her, he decided she didn't deserve a confrontation. She deserved punishment. Rayan's sharp mind and wealth made it easy to plan in secret. He chose the Maldives not out of romance, but convenience. Its isolation, vast ocean, and minimal witnesses made it the perfect setting. He arranged every booking himself, ensuring no one else knew their exact schedule. He promised Aisha a new beginning, but deep inside, he had already written her ending. Each smile he gave her on the flight, each photo he posed for, and each affectionate gesture was nothing more than a mask hiding his deadly intentions. As the days passed in the Maldives, the tension between Rayan and Aisha began to quietly grow. To outsiders, they still looked like the perfect newlyweds enjoying paradise. But beneath the calm surface, something unsettling was beginning to take shape. Rayan's mood changed unpredictably, one moment distant, the next strangely attentive. He often stared into the ocean for long periods, lost in thought, his face expressionless. Aisha tried to ignore it, thinking the stress of business might be following him even on vacation. She tried to keep him smiling with laughter, romantic dinners, and long walks on the beach, but his responses were cold and measured. Every time she brought up her dreams for the future or plans to start a family, he would simply nod without emotion. Sometimes, he disappeared for hours, claiming to handle urgent calls. When Aisha asked who was calling, he gave vague answers that made her uneasy. She didn't know that he was spending those hours studying the surroundings, the depth of the water, the weak spots of the deck railing, and the areas where sharks were known to gather at night. He was calculating, careful not to draw attention. The resort staff noticed that Aisha seemed lonely, often sitting by the beach alone while Rayan worked indoors. She began to feel a strange chill whenever he entered the room, as if something invisible stood between them. His touch no longer felt warm. Even when he smiled, it carried a sharpness that frightened her deep inside. She wanted to believe her husband still loved her, but his eyes told another story. The paradise she had imagined was slowly turning into a silent prison, and she didn't realize she was living with a man preparing to destroy her world completely. Rayan's plan was unfolding with disturbing precision. By the 5th day of their honeymoon, he had gathered every detail he needed. He knew the resort's schedule, the shark feeding times, and which areas were least monitored by cameras. He often charmed the staff with generous tips, pretending to be a caring husband planning a surprise for his wife. Everyone believed him. He asked about the best spots for private dinners by the water and inquired about how close sharks usually came to the villas. His interests seemed harmless, even romantic, but behind his polite smile was a dark motive. Aisha, unaware of his hidden intentions, was overjoyed when Rayan told her he had arranged something special for the evening. She spent the afternoon picking a dress and doing her hair, eager to make the night perfect. Rayan watched her quietly, his expression unreadable. He had already chosen the location, their villa's back deck, suspended over deep, open water. It was secluded, peaceful, and deadly. He requested candles to be set along the railing, claiming he wanted a romantic atmosphere. The soft glow of lights would hide the shadows beneath the water where the sharks often circled. That evening, as the sun sank into the horizon, the villa shimmered under candlelight. The ocean below looked calm and endless, reflecting the gold of the setting sky. Rayan acted gentle, pulling out a chair for Aisha, pouring her a drink, speaking softly for the first time in days. It almost felt normal again to her. She believed this dinner was a turning point, a return to love and peace. But for Rayan, it was the final rehearsal before the moment he had been waiting for, the night he would erase her forever. The night was breathtakingly beautiful, with the sea glimmering under a full moon and the sound of waves softly brushing against the wooden deck. Aisha felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in days. The soft candlelight reflected in her eyes as she looked at Rayan, hoping this evening would bring them closer again. He appeared calm and affectionate, complimenting her and raising a glass to new beginnings. For a brief moment, she believed the tension between them had faded. She smiled, unaware that she was sitting on the edge of her own fate. Rayan's heart beat steadily as he observed her every move. To anyone watching, he looked like a loving husband sharing a romantic dinner, but inside, he was completely detached. Every flicker of the candlelight, seemed to mirror the cold fire of his plan. When Aisha stood up to take a picture near the railing, he followed her with slow, deliberate steps. The ocean beneath them shimmered in silver, hiding the shadows of sharks that often gathered near the resort at night. He stood behind her, pretending to adjust the camera. She leaned slightly forward, her laughter soft and trusting. In that fleeting second, Rayan pushed, swift, silent, and final. The sound of her scream was drowned by the crashing waves as her body hit the water. The still surface broke into chaos, white foam and ripples spreading as she struggled to stay afloat. Then came the movement beneath, the dark shapes circling rapidly. Within moments, the sea that had once promised love turned crimson under the moonlight. Rayan stood frozen, staring into the water, his expression blank. Then he turned, blew out the candles one by one, and stepped inside, leaving behind the ocean to hide his crime. At dawn, the resort was calm and quiet, the waves gently moving under the pale light of morning. Then Rayan's voice shattered the peace as he burst into the reception area, shouting for help. He claimed Aisha had slipped and fallen into the ocean while they were taking photos late at night. His voice trembled, and his face was pale, perfectly imitating panic. Staff rushed toward the villa, alerting the local authorities and rescue team. Within minutes, divers began searching the surrounding waters. Rayan stood nearby, holding his head in his hands, whispering Aisha's name repeatedly, every gesture rehearsed. The sea was rough that morning, and the search went on for hours. Eventually, a torn piece of Aisha's white dress was found tangled in coral near the reef. No body surfaced, only silence and fragments of tragedy. The police concluded it was a heartbreaking accident, a new bride lost to the unpredictable ocean. Rayan's performance as the grieving husband convinced everyone. He refused food, cried in front of resort staff, and even posted a message on social media expressing his unbearable pain. The post went viral, and people from around the world sent him sympathy messages. Later that evening, when the search was called off, Rayan walked alone along the beach, appearing broken. In reality, he felt relief more than sorrow. He believed he had committed the perfect crime, one that nature itself would hide forever. He told the authorities he wanted to leave as soon as possible, unable to stay in a place that reminded him of her. They understood and offered condolences, unaware that the man boarding the flight back to Dubai carried not grief, but a chilling satisfaction that his plan had worked exactly as he intended. Days passed after Aisha's supposed accident, and the resort slowly returned to its normal rhythm. Guests came and went, the staff resumed their duties, and the story of the tragic honeymoon death became another whispered tale of misfortune. But one man couldn't stop thinking about that night. Ibrahim, a senior resort staff member, had served Rayan and Aisha during their stay. Something about Rayan's behavior before and after the incident didn't sit right with him. He remembered how Rayan had spent hours asking about shark feeding zones and the depth of the surrounding waters. At the time, Ibrahim thought it was curiosity, but now it felt strange, too specific, too intentional. On the night of the tragedy, Ibrahim had seen Rayan walking back toward his villa alone, around the same time the incident supposedly happened. He recalled how the man's face wasn't that of someone in shock. It was calm, almost blank. When he later saw Rayan acting hysterical at the reception, the memory of that calm expression unsettled him deeply. He tried to convince himself that grief affects people differently, but his instincts kept whispering that something was terribly wrong. A few days later, Ibrahim quietly reported his suspicions to the local police. He mentioned Rayan's unusual questions, his timing, and the inconsistencies in his story. Though the authorities had already filed the case as an accident, the officer in charge decided to take another look. The ocean had hidden Aisha's body, but human deceit often leaves small traces behind. Ibrahim's statement reopened a door that Rayan believed was permanently closed. What began as a whisper of doubt was about to grow into a full investigation that would slowly unravel every piece of Rayan's carefully constructed lie. When the investigation quietly reopened, the Maldivian authorities began by reviewing every piece of available footage from the resort's security system. Much of it showed nothing unusual: tourists walking by, staff cleaning, the ocean waves moving peacefully under the moonlight. But one small camera, positioned on a villa 2 units away from Rayan and Aisha's, captured something faint but crucial. Reflected in the glass panel of a nearby railing was the blurred image of a man standing close behind a woman. A moment later, she disappeared from view, followed by a quick movement from the man's shadow. Though the footage was grainy and distant, the timing perfectly matched Rayan's version of events. Investigators studied the clip repeatedly. It was not clear enough to confirm what had happened, but it raised immediate suspicion. Why had Rayan stood so close behind Aisha moments before she vanished? And why had the reflection shown him remaining still after her fall instead of reacting instantly? The officers decided to question the resort staff once more, gathering statements about his behavior that night. Their accounts were consistent. Rayan had been unusually calm for someone who had just lost his wife. The investigators then requested Rayan's phone records from the local network, hoping to find evidence of calls or messages made around the time of the incident. What they discovered added more doubt. His phone had been switched off for an entire hour, coinciding exactly with the time of Aisha's disappearance. The officers knew something didn't fit the picture of a grieving husband. The small reflection in the glass, combined with the silent phone and his detached behavior, turned a closed accident file into a potential murder case. For the first time, Rayan's perfect act began to crack. As investigators dug deeper, the image of Rayan as a devastated husband began to crumble. When police returned to the resort villa to re-examine the scene, they found no signs of struggle, no broken glass, no displaced furniture, no fingerprints out of place. Everything was almost too neat, as if cleaned deliberately. Then, one of the resort managers mentioned something odd. Before the honeymoon began, Rayan had specifically requested that the security cameras near his villa be turned off during their stay. He had claimed he valued privacy and wanted complete seclusion for his wife. At the time, it sounded like a reasonable request from a wealthy guest, but now it appeared disturbingly convenient. The authorities immediately requested the resort's technical team to check whether any footage from backup servers still existed. The main hard drive showed the cameras had indeed been manually disabled on the exact night of the incident. Fortunately, an automated cloud backup stored fragments of temporary data that might have captured images before the cameras went dark. Technicians began restoring those fragments, hoping for even the faintest trace of evidence. Meanwhile, police searched through Rayan's digital trail, his emails, messages, and booking records. They noticed that every part of the trip had been arranged personally by him, without involvement from Aisha or her family. Even the flight, villa selection, and dinner reservations had been booked under his name alone. His control over every detail was starting to look more like strategy than romance. While the resort continued to cooperate, the authorities knew they needed something stronger, proof that the fall was not accidental. The recovery of the missing footage was their only chance. Somewhere within those fragments, the truth about that night still waited to be revealed. As the Maldives authorities continued investigating, a financial specialist was assigned to analyze Rayan's bank accounts and insurance history. What he found shifted the case from suspicion to undeniable motive. Just 1 week before the wedding, Rayan had quietly purchased a massive life insurance policy in Aisha's name. The payout was extraordinary, an amount large enough to secure him for life, even if his business ever failed. The application had been signed only by him, listing himself as the sole beneficiary. To investigators, this was not a sign of love or protection. It was a carefully crafted financial setup. The specialist also uncovered that Rayan had taken loans and made several risky investments months before the wedding. His financial empire, which appeared stable from the outside, was beginning to show cracks. Internally, he was under pressure, facing heavy losses that he concealed from everyone, including Aisha. The insurance policy now looked less like a precaution and more like his escape plan. When questioned, Rayan claimed the policy was a loving gesture, meant to ensure Aisha would be taken care of in the future. But the documents told a different story. The policy was activated immediately, not after a waiting period, and the premium was paid in full upfront. Investigators also found emails showing Rayan had inquired multiple times about the fastest way to process claims in case of accidental death. This detail was impossible to ignore. The combination of his financial troubles, the newly discovered policy, and the suspicious timing solidified the investigators' belief that Aisha's death was not an accident. The motive was now clear: money. The loving husband image he had projected was unraveling rapidly, replaced by the portrait of a man who had planned every step with cold precision, driven by desperation and greed. When Rayan returned to Dubai, he played the role of a broken widower with unsettling perfection. The media portrayed him as a man crushed by tragedy. He gave interviews about love, loss, and fate, speaking softly and wearing black for weeks. People sympathized, praising his strength and dignity. He organized a charity event in Aisha's name, claiming it was her dream to help orphan children. Cameras captured his tears, and social media overflowed with comments calling him the most devoted husband. But behind the scenes, the Maldives investigation was far from over. The recovered backup footage from the resort's server finally finished processing. Although partially corrupted, it contained the crucial few seconds before Aisha disappeared. In the grainy video, Aisha could be seen standing near the edge of the deck, Rayan moving behind her, and then, a sudden motion, her body vanishing from the frame. Investigators enhanced the footage frame by frame. The angle didn't show a direct push, but the movement of his arm and the timing left little room for doubt. The Maldives police immediately contacted Interpol, issuing a red notice for Rayan's arrest. Unaware of the development, Rayan continued with his life as though he had escaped justice. He had already filed a claim for the insurance payout, stating that the documents from the Maldives confirmed accidental death. His confidence grew with each passing day. But when Interpol formally sent the warrant to Dubai authorities, his perfect performance began to crumble. Within hours, the story that once painted him as a grieving husband started turning against him. News broke that the widower of the Maldives tragedy was now a prime suspect in his wife's murder. The sympathy he had built so carefully was replaced overnight with suspicion and shock. The morning Rayan was arrested, Dubai International Airport was crowded as usual. He walked confidently through the terminal, dressed in a sharp suit, carrying only a briefcase. He had booked a one-way ticket to Switzerland, telling his associates he needed a break from the overwhelming media attention. What he didn't know was that the Maldives authorities had issued an international alert just hours earlier, and his name was already flagged. As he handed over his passport at immigration, the officer paused for a moment longer than usual, typing quietly. Within minutes, security officers surrounded him. Rayan remained calm, insisting there must be some mistake, but deep down, he knew his carefully built facade was collapsing. The arrest made global headlines within hours. The man once pitted as a heartbroken husband was now being called a monster who killed for money. Videos of his tearful interviews resurfaced online, now viewed with disgust and disbelief. The Maldives police confirmed that the new evidence linked him directly to Aisha's death, and arrangements were made to extradite him for trial. Rayan continued to deny everything, maintaining that he loved his wife and that the footage was misinterpreted. When investigators questioned him again, his confident demeanor began to waver. His explanations grew inconsistent. His calm turned into visible irritation. The authorities presented the insurance documents, phone data, and financial records, each piece tightening the noose around his lies. The public that once admired him turned hostile. Aisha's family, shattered but determined, vowed to see justice served. For the first time, Rayan was no longer in control. The same intelligence that helped him plan a flawless crime now trapped him in a web of evidence that even his arrogance couldn't escape. The trial began 6 months later and quickly became one of the most followed cases in international media. Cameras filled the courtroom, reporters from Dubai to London covering every detail. Rayan arrived in a crisp, gray suit, expression calm but his eyes empty. He refused to speak to journalists, confident that his wealth and influence would save him. Inside, the courtroom atmosphere was tense. The prosecution began by presenting the insurance documents, proving the million-dollar motive. Then came the digital evidence, emails, deleted messages, and the record of his deactivated phone during the exact hour Aisha disappeared. Each piece fit together like a puzzle, forming a chilling image of premeditation. Witnesses from the resort took the stand, including Ibrahim, whose quiet courage brought the truth to light. He described Rayan's odd behavior, his detailed questions about shark activity, and his coldness after the incident. Experts in marine safety testified that the fall described by Rayan was unlikely to have happened accidentally, given the villa's structure. When the partially restored CCTV footage was played, the courtroom fell silent. The blurry image of Rayan's silhouette standing behind Aisha before she vanished spoke louder than any words. The defense tried to argue that the footage was inconclusive and that grief can cause strange behavior. But the prosecution countered with clear logic and a timeline that left no doubt. After weeks of hearings, the jury withdrew to deliberate. Hours later, they returned with a unanimous verdict: guilty of premeditated murder. The judge sentenced Rayan to life imprisonment without parole. As the sentence was read, Rayan remained motionless, his once confident face hollow and lifeless. The man who believed he could outsmart everyone had finally met the one thing he couldn't control: justice. Rayan's conviction sent shockwaves across Dubai and beyond. The man who had once been admired for his success and charm was now condemned as a cold-blooded killer. News outlets replayed his old interviews side by side with the courtroom footage, showing the stark contrast between the loving husband he pretended to be and the murderer he truly was. Aisha's family wept in court as the verdict was read, finally feeling a measure of justice after months of agony. But justice could not bring their daughter back. Her mother said quietly to reporters, "We didn't want revenge. We wanted truth." Those words echoed worldwide, becoming a reminder that appearances can hide unimaginable darkness. In prison, Rayan was no longer a man of luxury and control. The walls that surrounded him became his silent punishment. He spent his days alone, haunted by memories of the night he had once thought was his victory. The very ocean he believed would keep his secret had betrayed him. Every sound of water in his cell reminded him of the waves that swallowed Aisha's final screams. Months later, Maldivian divers discovered a waterproof camera near the reef close to where Aisha had disappeared. Inside was a short video recorded hours before her death. In it, Aisha smiled at the camera, her voice soft as she said, "I feel like the happiest woman alive." The footage spread across social media, breaking hearts around the world. That final image of her joy became her legacy, a haunting symbol of innocence lost to greed and pride. Aisha's story turned into a global warning about trust and obsession. The paradise that began as a honeymoon had ended in tragedy, but her smile lived on, a silent witness to the truth Rayan could never escape.